So how, again, from your experience of working in places where they get this right,
Mhm.
how do these networks become created in a way that does move beyond tick box and doesn't feel like a HR initiative that actually is kind of the flavour of the month and doesn't really kind of become sustainable? So what sort of things can people do?
I think so. I've seen it work both ways, where it's been something that has also been asked by HR for volunteers, for example, but also where people have come forward and said, we've seen a gap, we've seen a need for this in the business, and we want to know what more we can do to support that, which is fantastic when you've got colleagues like that, and of course that needs to be cultivated. But that being said, I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing if it is initiated by HR, but as you quite rightly say, it can then seem like it's something that's coming from a supposed ivory tower, let's say. So I think the important thing to do there, and this is really where L&D comes into it as well, and the provision to develop people, is to identify who you've got, what causes they care about, and what they are aware of in terms of maybe some of the research and support that's out there, as well as, like I said earlier, really getting an idea of what that lived experience is on the ground. Then it's about being able to develop those people, enabling them and assisting them in what they're doing. So you might have remembered me mentioning earlier that these networks can often and will often work as almost an enterprise within an organization. So they should have a vision, they should have a strategy, they should have goals, and they should be able to work in synergy with other potential networks within the business as well. They should have a direct line into whoever is responsible for D&I in the business, to HR, to communications, as we mentioned earlier. And it's about then building the skills, the tools and the concepts for those individuals to be able to understand what impact they can have in the business. And it's that real sense of empowerment that can come with that. So that's actually what I've spent the best part of the last 2 years doing, is developing network leaders. Because, for example, you may have volunteers come forward to be network leaders who've never led a process or never led people in their career. So it's about being able to basically take them through a leadership development program, and be able to represent other people within the business. I think another thing that is really, really important is something that I know we've mentioned discussing, and that's allies.
Yeah.
So how we use allies, because I think people look at a network and at first they try and attract people, whether that's driven by the individuals who've come forward and said we'd like to start this network, or whether it's something that's initiated by HR. You often get to a point where you've gone beyond really searching far and wide for people who want to take part, and then it's almost too many cooks, and it's a tipping point. So I think one of the things that I would say is, within a network, it's about having a sustainable model and a structure. So you may well get to the stage where you have what I would call active members, where you then also have people who are classed as members of a network, but they're more sort of seasonal and supportive in the way that they contribute. And then you've got allies, or potentially champions within your business. So with the active members, you need to think about what's their responsibility. So you're defining what it is that they're doing, when they're doing it by, who they're responsible to, and all their stakeholders are kept informed of what's going on. You need to manage their expectations, and they need to manage the expectations of those stakeholders. And then there needs to be things like, you need to think around what's the tenure for them, how long are they going to be doing that, and also what support can they get in terms of having the time to run a network alongside their day job, so to speak. Supportive members, if you're aware that they are going to be seasonal because they may not have the time to be able to give to something, or perhaps they have a certain skill set, then you need to again be able to define that, support them, and continuously consult with them, despite the fact that they might not be involved in the everyday running of a network. And when it comes to allies, I think allies are widely underused in organisations, because I think people come forward and say, oh, well, I want to be allied to this cause. I'm not necessarily a member of that community, or I don't have that characteristic, but I'm a strong ally. And I think some organisations get to the stage, whether it's a lack of resource or time or insight, where they end up underutilising those allies. Now, it's fantastic to get allies going around wearing lanyards that demonstrate support and that visibility. That's fantastic. But for me, that's one of the earlier steps. What should happen beyond that, and what should happen in the planning prior to that, is thinking about how you really want to use allies in terms of their skills, their level of influence, the network that they have in and outside the organisation. What is it that you want from them? So if somebody comes forward and says, I want to be an ally, talk to them about what's their motivation. What do they want their input to be? What do they want their legacy as part of being involved with the network to be? Because that is where you can really see exponential progress in leveraging their networks, leveraging their skills. It might be, for example, that someone wants to be an ally for a network and they happen to be a graphic designer, and they can lend those skills to some of the efforts that the network are putting forward. It might be that there are senior allies in the business who are incredibly influential in the business and can really help move things forward. And that doesn't necessarily mean in a budgetary way. I mean, of course, that would be incredibly helpful to the cause of a lot of networks, but it can also just be about getting that buy-in at different levels in the business.